All right, we're on. So, this morning it's going to be a bit of a familiar story for a lot of you. Story some of you have heard since you were pretty little. I know for myself it's a story that I've heard many times. In a lot of cases, we teach this story to little kids because we find it cute, all the animals on the boat. We find that it's we find it's a pretty child-friendly story. It makes for interesting artwork on walls and stuff, but it's not really a kid's story. When you think about it, it's a pretty scary story. It's not a very, not really a child-friendly story. I'm studying up for this. I was kind of appalled that we teach this story to so many kids because it's a very dark, heavy story. And so, but there is a bit of a light at the end of the story, but it is pretty dark and pretty heavy when you think about it. First of all, I'll acknowledge the obvious. If you've seen this movie, I'm sorry. It's not even that I expected this movie to be even remotely close to what the Bible had to say. But it's just that it's not even a good movie. I hoped that even if if they changed a few things from the Bible, that they'd make this into at least a watchable movie. But no, it's not even. It's really not even good to watch. At least I didn't think so. In any case, if you think you've watched this movie and that you think, oh well, I know the story of Noah, I know the story of the ark and all the animals. No, you don't. If you've seen this movie and you think you know the story, it's not exactly that. It's not really accurate. It's not at all faithful to what the Bible had to say. And this morning I want to look at the actual story from the Bible. So I'll try this morning to give you possibly a fresh take. I know it's maybe a bit of a tall order to do with such a familiar story, a story that a lot of us have heard so many times. But at least I'll try to give us a bit of a fresh take, maybe some stuff about the story that you haven't ever heard before. So we'll look at a bit of the context of the story. So the beginning of the Bible, right off the bat, goes from the very beginning of history. Genesis 1 and 2 talks to us about creation, the beginning of the world. Genesis 3 talks about the entrance of sin into the world, the first people and their first sin, and how everybody since then have been sinners. Then after that, chapter 4, with the first murder, story of Cain and Abel, two brothers, older killed the younger one. And then that brings us to chapter 5, which is a quick summary of 1,600 years of history. Very quick summary. In one chapter, it's 1,600 years of history. And so we see here it's a bit of a genealogy. Even for people who speak French, it's not too hard. I'm sorry if it's written a bit small. But in any case, the bars basically represent the lives of of the various people that are mentioned in Genesis 5. So here at the top, the red bar is Adam, the first man. So his life spans all the way to 930 years after creation. So you have him, and then the second one is his son, then his son Seth, then his son Enosh, son King, and so on. What's interesting in this chapter is that first of all, when you read it at first glance, it says Adam was there. He had his son Seth, lived 930 years. He died, and then Seth had his son at this age, lived however many years it was, he died, and so on and so forth. And you might think, okay, so this guy had his son and he died, but no, actually, these people got to meet their great-great-great-great-grandchildren. And it's not something that you really notice when you first read the chapter, but you look at it like this, and you look at up until when that Adam lived, you see that he actually got to meet his so son, grandson, great-grandson, great-great-grandson, great-great. So he got to meet his, I think his fifth great, so great 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 grandson. So so it's pretty so something you don't often think about, but that's how it was. So that not all that important to the story, but something I found pretty interesting. It certainly shows us that Adam was certainly able to meet his great 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 grandson, and he was able to transmit the history, the story of the world and everything. He was able to transmit that to that descendant of his. And it wasn't like he told the story to him, who told the story to him, who told the story to him. It was really like he told the story to him, and then that was so you had a pretty first-hand account of what happened. Another interesting thing is, I don't know if you see, so the blue line here, you might not see it. That's the flood. That's the year of the flood, when Noah went through the flood. And I don't know if you see here, the gray bar here is Methuselah. He's the oldest man recorded that ever lived up until, I think it's 969 years old. Yeah. So he died the year of the flood. When you add it all up, he actually died the year of the flood. There's two prevailing theories about that, why he died the year of the flood. One is that he was a believer, that he believed in God, and that God waited till he died to send the flood. Second theory is that he wasn't a believer and that he died in the flood. Those are the two main theories. I think it covers all the bases. So, which moves us to Genesis chapter 6. So over the course of 1600 years, the world degenerated greatly. So we'll just read quickly a few verses. Genesis chapter 6, verse 1. I'm sorry if you're reading in a different version. I'll be reading in the ESV. When man began to multiply on the face of the land and daughters were born to them, the sons of God saw that the daughters of man were attractive, and they took as their wives any they chose. Then the Lord said, My spirit shall not abide in man forever, for he is flesh, and his days shall be 120 years. The Nephilim were on the earth in those days, and also afterward, when the sons of God came into the daughters of man, and they bore children to them. These were the mighty men who were of old, men of renown. The Lord saw that the wickedness of man was great in the earth, and that every intention of the thoughts of his heart were only evil continually. So over the course of those 1600 years, so the world degenerated quite a bit. There's quite a bit in those verses that's a bit controversial. So some people think that there's a bit of debate as to who the sons of God are in verse 2, where it says the sons of God saw that the daughters of man were attractive. What does that mean? There's several different theories. One is that they're demons, fallen angels that decided to mate with human women, and then that produced some kind of giants. And it's kind of a pretty fantastic theory. The one that certainly is the one that's the most interesting. It makes for the best movies, but. I personally don't lean toward that theory. If you do, that's okay. We can still be friends. But in any case, I personally lean toward the theory that they are it's actually talking about the descendants of Seth, so the kind of the godly line. So the Adam, Seth, and all that genealogy, that branch in the tree, if you will, that they kind of decided that they were considered maybe more the sons of God, and that then they saw that the daughters of man, so the ones from the ungodly women, the non-believers, so to speak, they looked good, they were attractive, and then they decided to go get married to them. So, and where the lesson would be, Christians don't go and marry non-Christians. It's not a very good idea. That's where that would be my take on it. And we, like I said, we don't have to agree. We can still be friends when we leave. At the very least, that's what I think it is. So the godly line, the godly descendants decided to go ahead and get married with some non-believers. Then after that, but then what do you do with the giants? How does that produce giants in the world? Well, the word giant can also, it's a bit of a vague word, and it's not really one that's very clear as to what it means. It could possibly mean just larger than life. They're superstars. They're people who are well known, and so those would be the people who were well known back in those days. They were kind of the superstars, the rock stars, if you will. So that's a bit of actually right there. There we go. So that's a bit of my take on the first 5 verses of chapter 6. In any case, what we can all agree on is that the world greatly degenerated. Things were really bad, and they were at a point where I don't even think that, even as messed up as our world is, I don't believe that the world is as bad now as it was back then, because it says, chapter 5, that every intention of the thoughts of his heart, of man's heart, was only evil continually. So all the people on earth, it was always, all they could think about was, how can I get one over on my neighbor? How can I harm this person? How can I help myself? And that was all that they ever thought about. It was never, oh, maybe we should take care of this person, and maybe we should, show this much altruism or something like that, which we still see some of it in our world today. Let's be honest. But back then, it was just all evil continually, and I don't think that we're there today. And God even came to the point where he regretted man's existence on earth. So think about that. That's a crazy verse, verse 6. And the Lord regretted that he had made man on the earth, and it grieved him to his heart. And so the Lord said, I will blot out man whom I have created from the face of the land, man and animals and creeping things and birds of the heavens, for I am sorry that I have made them. So God regretted that he made human beings. So, however, at the very least, God decided to show grace to one man. It's not that this one man deserved it, but he showed grace to one man, which is Noah. Verse 8, but Noah found favor in the eyes of the Lord. These are the generations of Noah. Noah was a righteous man, blameless in his generation. Noah walked with God, and Noah had 3 sons, Shem, Ham, and Japheth, or Japheth, or however you want to say it. So God showed grace to only one man. So it's not that Noah was perfect. Noah was a sinner. Every man who has come since Adam has been a sinner. He was a sinner, and therefore he deserved God's judgment. He deserved God's judgment just as much as all the others. But he knew God. He was probably the only person in the world that knew anything about God. He was certainly the only one who had faith in God. And the Bible says that compared to all the others, at the very least, in his generation, he was blameless. Even with his sin, even through the fact that he wasn't perfect, he still tried as hard as he could to walk with God, to not do like the other people in the world at his time. So God decided that he was going to spare Noah, not because he deserved it, but because God shows grace to people. Because Noah deserved judgment just as much as everyone else. I'm always a bit concerned when this story is told in a way that we say, there's good people and there's bad people. There was Noah and there was all the bad people. God destroyed the bad people but saved Noah. Therefore, God helps the good people but doesn't help the bad people. So be good. That's the moral of the story. Be good. Be like Noah. I have a big problem with that. Because there's nobody who's good. We all deserve the judgment of God. There is nobody who is good. At least not in God's eyes. We might be decent people at least compared to the world around us. Then I think that's a good thing. But at the very least, in the eyes of God, we all fall short. So, which leads us to chapter 6, verses 13 and 14. God asked Noah to build a large boat that would be able to contain some of all the animals. So we'll read chapter 6, verse 13. And God said to Noah, I have determined to make an end of all the flesh, for the earth is filled with violence through them. Behold, I will destroy them with the earth. Make yourself an ark of gopher wood. Make rooms in the ark and cover it inside out with pitch. And then after that, there's a bit more about the dimensions of the ark. And then verse 17, it says, For behold, I will bring a flood of waters upon the earth to destroy all flesh, in which is the breath of life under heaven. Everything that is on the earth shall die. But I will establish my covenant with you, and you shall come into the ark, you, your sons, your wife, and your sons' wives with you. And of every living thing of all flesh you shall bring 2 of every sort into the ark, to keep them alive with you. They shall be male and female. So God asked Noah, build an ark. Here's how big you're going to make it. It's going to be a massive, massive thing. And here's how you're going to make it, what wood you're going to use, what material you're going to cover it with. And then after that, we're going to fill it up with all the animals. And then after that, I'm going to destroy the world. And think about how much faith this took for Noah. Noah had probably never seen a big body of water. He had possibly never seen rain. I don't think so. I believe he had probably seen rain before. Some people think, though, that he didn't because of the chapter in Hebrews 11 where it said that Noah had faith about things, had trusted God about things unseen. So people think, oh, that means he had never seen rain before, so therefore he had what faith? I don't know. I think that he just probably means that he'd never seen a flood. That's what I think, but he maybe had never seen rain. So certainly a lot of people think that. He had certainly never seen flooding on any kind of a scale. He had never seen a global flood, that's for sure. He'd never seen a local flood. He'd probably never seen an ocean or the sea or anything like that. Yet, Noah obeyed God. Verse 22, it's a verse that we kind of gloss over, but it says, Noah did this, and he did all that God had commanded him. Think about that. He had no evidence. He had no reason to think that this, I don't know how God talked to him, but he had not really any reason to think that this was actually all going to come true. Certainly all the people around him didn't believe it was true. And yet he obeyed God, and he got into this massive construction project. And it's not even like God told him, just build a tent, something that's going to take an hour or so to do. No, it was a massive boat. This was a huge project, and he did it. And it took at least 100 years to build. When we first start the story, it says that he was 500 years old. And by the time the flood came, he was 600 years old. So this is a 100-year construction project that he did based on possibly some voice that he heard. So imagine devoting 100 years of your life. I mean, most of us won't even get 100 years. Probably all of us won't get 100 years. And imagine devoting all that time to something that might not happen. Something that you're not even sure is going to happen. And preparing for that thing, it's mind-blowing. It's 100 years where he could have been doing something else. It's 100 years that he could have devoted to some hobby, to getting good at some video game or something. It's 100 years that he could have, that people laughed at him. It's 100 years that he could have been traveling the world. It's 100 years that he could have been trying to devote to some business. Think about everything that can be accomplished in 100 years. Noah obeyed God for 100 years, even though he didn't have much evidence, hardly any evidence, that this was going to pay off. And day by day, he went out. He nailed planks of wood together. He put pieces of wood together. And he measured pieces of wood. And he cut them. And he nailed them. And he did some more. There was nothing impressive about it. There was nothing that was remotely there was nothing that was remotely awesome about it. It was just nailing pieces of wood. It was just silent, quiet faithfulness. Noah probably went to bed some nights thinking there hasn't been much progress. I haven't done much today. I don't really see it in the grand scheme of things. But he continued. There was nothing extraordinary about putting pieces of wood together, but he continued. It's only after 100 years of work, of hard work, that it finally gave something big. In a lot of our lives and in a lot of our ministries, it's a lot like that. It's going out day by day and being faithful in the little things and nailing pieces of wood together and being faithful to God. Oftentimes, that's where God will reward us and will bring the payoff after long periods of time. We often want our Christian lives, we often want our ministries to be just one awesome, crazy thing after another. And I know personally, and I know a lot of people, it seems in my generation, we're kind of impatient, and we just want one big thing after another. We want our best life now. We want just all the crazy stuff to happen. We want people meeting Jesus left and right. We just want all those big things to happen, and of course it's awesome when it does. But Christian life isn't often like that. It's often getting up, putting your pants on, going to work, being faithful in your work, taking those little times that you can with the people around you to tell them about your faith, tell them about Jesus. It's for those of us who have various ministries in our churches, it's helping the people in those ministries, and then you go to bed and you don't see any progress. It's doing that day after day after day. And that's often what Christian life is like. And oftentimes sometimes we will even die and not even see the result, because we don't live 100 years and we don't live 600 years like Noah did. But sometimes we get to see the massive harvest, the great results of everything that we labored to do, everything that we worked so hard to do. And suddenly we're happy that we prepared so well. I'm sure that Noah, when the rains came, can you imagine the satisfaction, the payoff about, I worked so hard for this for 100 years, and now all of a sudden the rains come. Wow, I'm so happy I did this. I'm so happy that every day I got up and I put my pants on and I nailed those pieces of wood together, and it gave me a big boat. So if if I can encourage you at the very least with anything, in all of your lives, if you think, there's nothing happening, I'm going to bed and there's nothing, none of this is amounting to anything, I'm working so hard, I go to work every day, I'm faithful, I pay my bills, I give to my church, I do so much, but I don't see it amounting to anything, just remember, the rains probably haven't come yet. You might not have seen the results yet. But you're building something. And when the rains come, you'll be happy that you built something. You'll be happy that you obeyed God. Continuing the story, we'll skip ahead a little bit. It's not that some verses aren't important. It's just that for time's sake, I can't go through every single one, even though I'd love to. Chapter 7, verse 13, it says, "On the very same day Noah and his sons, Shem, Ham, and Japheth, and Noah's wife and 3 wives of his sons, with them entered the ark, and they and every beast according to its kind, and all the livestock according to their kinds, and every creeping thing that creeps on the earth according to its kind, and every bird according to its kind, and every winged creature. They went into the ark with Noah, 2 and 2 of all flesh, in which there was the breath of life. And those that entered, male and female of all flesh, went in as God had commanded him, and the Lord shut him in." So Noah, it's kind of a heavy moment to think about. He probably finished building the ark, and then probably just finished the massive construction project, and he's finally ready to go in. God brought all the animals to him. He didn't even need to go out and find them. And Noah was probably looking out, waiting. Is anybody going to come? There's room. Is anybody going to come? Probably looking out, seeing the lights on at his neighbor's house. The lady who lived down the street probably just, starting her fire to make her meal for the night. And all those people just carrying on their daily lives, and they didn't know what was about to happen. It's why I say it's not a kid's story, because it's heavy. It's heavy to think about. All these people that they were just going about their daily lives, and they didn't know that death was going to come to them. And I think it's significant. It says the Lord is the one who shut the door. The Lord shut him in. I don't know why. I don't know if it's because the door was too big. It probably took a big door to get those elephants in. I don't know. In any case, it says that God's the one who closed the door. Who knows? Maybe it's because Noah was kind of hesitant. What if someone else comes? What if somebody comes? We want to be ready. No, God's the one who closed the door. And God judged the entire world by sending a flood. Oh, no more sound. Allô? Ça marche-tu? Nice day, isn't it? Huh? So, is it working? Okay, good. And we're back on. So God judged the entire world by sending a flood. Verse 11. In the 600th year of Noah's life, in the 2nd month, on the 17th day of the month, on that day the fountains of the great deep burst forth, and the windows of the heavens were opened. And the rain fell upon the earth 40 days and 40 nights. And skipping ahead to verses 17 to 20. The flood continued 40 days on the earth. The waters increased and bore up the ark, and it rose high above the earth. The waters prevailed and increased greatly on the earth, and the ark floated on the face of the waters. And the waters prevailed so mightily on the earth that all the high mountains under the whole heaven were covered. The waters prevailed above the mountains, covering them 15 cubits deep. So even above the highest mountains, water covered all that. And the end result was that everything and everyone on the face of the earth died. Verses 21 to 23. And all the flesh died that moved on the earth. Birds, livestock, beasts, all swarming creatures that swarm on the earth, and all mankind. Everything on the dry land in whose nostrils was the breath of life died. He blotted out every living thing that was on the face of the ground, man and animals and creeping things and the birds of the heavens. They were blotted out from the earth. Only Noah was left, and those who were with him in the ark, and the waters prevailed on the earth 150 days. God was very severe in how he judged the earth. And for a lot of people, I know it's very shocking. It's possibly caused some people to anger and to think that that's not okay. So the main arguments that are made against God, so a lot of people make arguments against God in this situation. They'll say, first of all, God can't kill all those people. That's genocide. He's a criminal. I've heard that many times. God says not to kill people, but he killed millions and billions of people. That's even worse. He's a criminal. The fact is, it's very different for God. All life belongs to God. So he alone can give it. He alone can take it away. So for example, if you come to my house and my wife and I have my wife does it, but we have a very nice garden, a lot of plants, a lot of nice bushes and rose bushes and flowers and stuff. If you were to come to my house and start moving the bushes around and to taking them out and putting them in the garbage, are you allowed to do that? No, because it's my garden, or my wife's garden, but it's our garden. It's our plants. You can't do that. If my wife decides to take a shovel and start moving plants around and taking them out, throwing them away, is she allowed to do that? They belong to us. They belong to us. So that life belongs to us, so we're allowed to do what we want with it. All life belongs to God, and I know it's hard for us to believe that. We like to be the masters of our own destiny, but all life belongs to God. He's made all of us. So he's not a criminal. All life belongs to him. Another argument that's made against God is that he could have given people more time. He could have warned them, could have given them more time. He gave them over 100 years. All that time that Noah was building the ark. He gave them a long time. He could have, and another one is he could have warned them. Could have told them that the flood was coming. He did. God did warn them. Noah warned them. 2 Peter 2:5 says that he was a preacher of justice. He preached probably with his words. Or what he didn't say with his words, he said with his hammer as he was nailing those boards together. Every time he hit a nail into those boards, he was pronouncing judgment on the world and warning them, look, I'm building this not for nothing. Come ask me what this is for, somebody. So, the people were warned. And it's not only a story of judgment, but it's also a story of grace. That God saved a family. He could have judged everyone, and that's what everyone deserved. The story is not only a story of judgment, it's a story about how God actually saved someone. Everyone deserved judgment. But only Noah and his family were saved by the ark and by the grace of God. Noah and his family then were able to regain solid ground about a year later, and they started repopulating the earth, and we are their descendants, every single one of us. So in conclusion, God shows grace to people who don't deserve it. You might think, Noah sort of did deserve it. He was a good man. He was better. He was better than the others. He was only a righteous man because of God's grace. He was good compared to the people of his time, but he certainly deserved God's judgment. And it's not just a story about, God's going to get you if you do the bad things. It's also a story about, no, God is willing to save some. And God is willing to save you even today. God may also ask you to do something that may seem crazy in the eyes of a corrupt world. God may ask you to do something that may seem crazy in the eyes of a corrupt world. Back in those days, the world was very corrupt. It was bad. And God asked Noah to do something that probably seemed insane to the people of those days. That world probably thought, that is crazy. That big boat you're building in the middle of the land, that's useless. That is stupid. Why are you doing that? But there was a reason for it, and it paid off. And today, our world is corrupt. And God might ask every single one of you to do something crazy in the eyes of a corrupt world. The world around you might think that what God is asking you to do is crazy. God might ask you to do things like, go to a Bible school and pay a bunch of money for a piece of paper that's not worth anything in the eyes of the world. Or God might ask you, hey, come go to another province where they don't speak your language and try and share the gospel with a bunch of kids that don't want to hear anything about it. I don't know. That's fiction, right? That doesn't happen. No, God might ask you, give up your life as, for in your future as somebody who could make a whole lot of money and go tell people about Jesus instead. God might ask you to do all kinds of crazy things. Or the crazy thing he might ask you to do is, in your workplace, speak up and tell people about your faith. Or at school, he might ask you to do the same thing. That's crazy in the eyes of a corrupt world. But God might ask you to do it. And if he asks you to do it, will you have the faith that Noah had to obey him? And finally, God saves us from his coming judgment. Luke 17, 26 and 27. We can turn there. Luke 17, 26. It says, just as it was in the days of Noah, so will it be in the days of the Son of Man. They were eating and drinking and marrying and being given in marriage until the day when Noah entered the ark and the flood came and destroyed them all. God saves us from his coming judgment. The same thing that happened in the days of Noah, where Noah was looking out and thinking God's judgment is coming, and all these people don't know. They're going about their lives and they just don't know. All these people that they're not aware of what's going to happen. The same thing that happened in those days will happen again. And God will come and will judge the world. Are we ready for that? And more importantly than that, though, is that God saves us from his coming judgment. God's judgment is coming, but you don't have to go through it. The good news about this story is that just as God provided an ark for Noah, and the ark was able to save Noah and his family and all the animals, or some of all the animals, from the flood, God has sent away. He is sent away for all of us to be saved. And that way is Jesus. Jesus died on the cross for our sins, and that way we can be saved from God's coming judgment. When God will judge the whole world, we don't have to go through it. By placing our faith in Jesus, repenting from our sins, we can be saved from God's judgment to come. And I hope that's something that everyone here has done. And I hope that if you haven't, it is something that you will consider doing, placing your faith in Jesus, repenting from your sins. God, I thank you for this morning. I thank you for all my friends that are here. And I pray that you would help us, that you would show us the way to be, to do crazy things in the eyes of a corrupt world. I pray for anyone who might not be saved from your coming judgment, that you would also fill them with your Spirit, save them, so that we may all grab onto the ark. And I thank you that you will that you saved me. I thank you that you've saved many of us, and that we are on the ark, so to speak. And I thank you that this is a story about you saving people. And I thank you that you're willing to save every single one of us. Amen.